Oh, God.
Hello and welcome to the THC Show. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson, and this is the show where we talk about truth, hope, and change. Three things that we really need in this world, especially in today's world, and how that relates to THC, the active compound in cannabis that provides the euphoria along with the healing power that it does for all the things that you might need. On the show today, we'll have 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca join us for the 420 session. Jerry Martin will be here, or maybe he won't. We're not sure yet. He hasn't checked in, although he did say he was coming. And we'll check in with the Healing Wave CSP RV and see what's going on with the Cannabis Substitution Program as always as well. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the reasons why we should not have prohibition of cannabis or this so-called legalization, which is just over-regulation of cannabis, which still leaves illegal cannabis, in fact, more illegal than before with harsher penalties, more enforcement dollars, and even more enforcement teams. And what that all results in, unfortunately, is such a great opportunity for corruption that it should not be happening. There is a whole bunch of reasons. On one of the previous shows, I gave a ton of reasons, probably more than a dozen reasons. Each and every one of them would stand on its own as to why cannabis should not be prohibited by our government officials. But the one about corruption is the one that I want to talk about a bit today. This so-called legalization has created an absolute breeding ground for corruption. And so did Prohibition before that. I mean, Prohibition, all by itself without any legalization, resulted in all kind of cops being bribed and money being stolen and drugs that were seized disappearing and lots of policemen being charged and fired and lots of other things as well. But with legalization comes these caps and licenses that they hand out and caps on licenses. And there is just so much potential for corruption. In one U.S. city, because of referendums passed very largely by the populace, they had to bring in legalization of cannabis for recreational use. So the city put it out there to tender. They were going to allow a couple hundred cannabis dispensaries. They got thousands of applications. Each application required thousands of dollars in non-refundable application fees. They made millions of dollars just on putting out to tender cannabis dispensaries. So the corruption needs to stop, and it's not going to stop unless we absolutely free the plant. There will be always corruption going on within the cannabis industry, within police and enforcement industries, within political parties, and all of that is going to continue until we actually free the plant. In California, 2 city officials were each given 2 years in jail for their part in the corruption to do with the licensing in California. There's a cannabis magnate in San Luis Obispo who has admitted that he's bribed officials. And definitely officials have been bribed and are being bribed all the time. That's how this is working, and that's how it's rolling out. We at the Cannabis Substitution Program have been trying to get a license from Health Canada and the federal government to allow us to continue a program where we've been saving people's lives, getting them off of the hard drugs and the street drugs for almost 5 years. We have an amazing success record. We have harmed no one. We've had no complaints, although many people, of course, with cannabis high-dose edibles will eat too much once, maybe twice, usually not a third time. It's not a fun thing to do, and they self-regulate, and that's the way it should be. You can't have a government decide that you can only have so much of cannabis, and that's the limit, and after that you're a criminal. That's ridiculous, and they can't do that because everybody is so different. Some people don't require much in the way of cannabis or cannabis high-dose edibles to help them with the drivers of addiction. Some people need a whole lot. Some people need thousands of milligrams every day of high-dose edibles to deal with their serious health issues. So a government that comes along and puts arbitrary caps on things and arbitrary limits on things and inflates prices is just rife with potential for corruption. Cannabis legalization should have meant that there's no more penalties for cannabis. A penalty for cannabis? How do you justify a penalty for cannabis? The prohibition of cannabis, using the criminal law, in imprisoning millions of people over the many decades of cannabis prohibition has just caused us so much trouble, cost us so much money, ruined so many lives. For what? It was never justified. It's never been an actual crime to grow plants, to possess plants, to use plants. How could that be a crime? How could they get away with that? Why would we let them get away with that? I mean, I took law in school. Many of us have some lay knowledge about justice and what the law is supposed to be about. For it to be a crime, you have to have had the intent to cause serious harm to somebody. That's one of the main components of a crime. Two things have to be present and always had to be present. So how did that ever happen? That we don't need actus reus and mens reus anymore? How did it ever happen that you don't have to understand that your actions were going to cause serious damage before you did it, and then you went ahead and did it, and that's what made it a crime? How did it ever become a crime to have possession of some plant matter? It's ludicrous. It's insane. And they've been ruling with insanity for all of my life. And I think we all just accept it because just about everybody, in fact, everybody has been born into it. There's nobody left that was here before there was prohibition on cannabis and drugs. Well, maybe they're 100 and some odd years old. In Canada, that happened in 1923. In the States, it happened before that. Although federally, not until the 1930s. But certainly cannabis prohibition in the border states and many other states was rampant well over 100 years ago. So none of us remember what it's like to not have cannabis prohibition. None of us remember what it must have been like 150 or 200 years ago to live in a country that was supposed to be founded with democratic principles, with public servants, and using common law justice practices. Because cannabis prohibition does not fit in at all with common law principles. There's just no intent to cause damage. There's no damage caused. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In fact, when you look at Jerry Martin, in the case that we've been following for the last couple of years with Jerry here in Canada, he was a dispensary owner. That was his big crime. He was a man who wanted to give back to his community after living a rough life prior to that and feeling like he needed to do something to make up for it. The way he could make up for it was by helping people that were sick get access to cannabis in a remote town in Saskatchewan. He spent 4.5 years helping the people in his community and the surrounding communities. There was 1,000 members of his dispensary in a town that only had 1,000 people in it. And everybody that was part of his dispensary had to have a doctor on board confirming diagnosis. They had to qualify in all the ways that you would have to qualify in an effort to protect himself, thinking that if he did what the government would probably want by following the rules set out for the Compassion Club in Vancouver way back in the day by Philippe Lucas and Rial Kapler, that he would be protected from prosecution because he was making sure that all the people that he helped had a doctor supporting them. But after 4.5 years, 4.5 years of people coming in his shop every day and thanking him with tears in their eyes for being there and helping them get access to what was saving their lives and improving their quality of life, 4.5 years. Nobody ever was harmed. Nobody ever died. Where is a victim? Where is there a victim of Jerry's anywhere? 4.5 years of giving back, of helping people, not hurting people, not knowing in his mind that what he was doing was going to cause serious damage to people, but believing in his mind that what he was doing was the right thing, knowing 100% that what he was doing was helping people in profound ways. And that was his goal. That was his intention. He had no intention to cause damage. There was no damage caused. We've now had court proceedings where the government, on behalf of all of us, spending millions of dollars to pursue him in court, came up with not one single person that had been harmed in 4.5 years of Jerry helping people. Jerry had a slew of people that put together affidavits for him. There was hundreds of people that would have testified for him. Not one on the government side, wasting our tax dollars, trying to harm and punish somebody for helping people for 4.5 years. Why? Why? The reason? Corruption. It's all about corruption. This government has been in bed with corporations in Canada since the beginning. That's who they serve. That has always been their masters. You can see it by their policies. You can see it by the prohibition of cannabis, and you can see it by the legalization of cannabis. This so-called legalization of cannabis was designed to continue the prohibition to the point where all of the groups making money off of prohibition get to continue doing that. He satisfied them. He satisfied them by disappointing us. We have been campaigning for cannabis legalization for a couple of decades here in Vancouver, longer than that really, but myself for the last couple of decades. We did a great job. We would amass over 100,000 people April 20th to come and protest these laws. We were so successful that Justin Trudeau, the new leader of the Liberal Party back in the day, when they didn't even have opposition status, ran on a platform of legalizing cannabis for everybody and won a majority government. That's pretty spectacular. In all my years of activism, we had never a chance of getting any political party except the marijuana party to campaign on a platform of legalizing cannabis. But there we were. Trudeau was going to do it. And we supported him. We put his picture up at 420 on a pack of zigzag rolling papers. And we said, vote for Trudeau. He's going to legalize cannabis for us. But he didn't legalize cannabis for us. He legalized cannabis for the rich, for the powerful, for the corporate. He made it so that those making money off of prohibition got to still keep making money. He legalized in such a way that the high price being paid for cannabis on the black market or the underground marketplace is maintained and increased. Ludicrous. Ludicrous. $10 a gram. Government stores $18 a gram. Soon they're going to have craft cannabis at $25 a gram. Are you kidding me? It's just a plant. There's no reason for that. If it was allowed in the open marketplace like every other plant, that's the only thing farmers would grow for a while. Who would grow anything else if you can get like dollars per gram? Nobody. No farmer in his right mind would ever choose to grow anything else at pennies on the pound if they could get dollars on the gram for this other crop here. All farmers would switch over to cannabis immediately if they were allowed to. And that would last for a little while. Until the price came down, which it would. Because you don't need to make dollars on the gram for any plant, let alone cannabis. Cannabis grows more biomass per cubic meter than any other plant a farmer could grow. And it's easier to grow. Less pesticides. Less fertilizer. It grows quite nicely on its own. Hybrid greenhouses would produce cannabis at probably under $10 a pound. If you grow it outdoors, economists, researchers have come up with a dollar figure for a pound of cannabis grown just outdoors without adding anything to it. $4.50 a pound. In an indoor situation, which is kind of crazy, growing cannabis indoors has only happened because of prohibition. You can't bring the sunshine inside. They try real hard. They've got pretty good lights, and they can grow pretty good cannabis indoors, but it's expensive. The hydro is expensive. The fans, the lighting, everything is expensive indoors. And those same researchers and economists that came up with $4.50 a pound for outdoor say that the first crop indoors might cost as much as $500 a pound because of all the setup costs. But every subsequent crop after that should be about $250 a pound. That's still high for a plant. But there are a lot of costs involved. And there's more to it than that. It's fairly easy to grow cannabis, but it's not fairly easy to grow cannabis really well. And there's people out there that have been spending all kinds of time and effort researching for themselves the best ways to grow, experimenting and learning, and they're really good growers. They've been growing really good quality cannabis for quite a while, and their expertise is valuable, so they deserve some money for that. But let's be realistic. Not everybody needs to have connoisseur-grown cannabis. In fact, the cannabis that could be grown outdoors is fine. Filled with cannabinoids, filled with terpenes, still really good medicine for people. Hybrid greenhouse cannabis, really good cannabis. Really good cannabis. All anybody would need, really. Sure, some people want to have better cannabis, and that's fine. they can have it. I hope they have stores where they can buy it. I'm sure they will. I'm sure that there will be people charging high dollars for really good cannabis grown by absolute expert growers, indoors with all the best equipment, paying for all their hydro. And you can go there and you can pay probably by the gram for cannabis. But that doesn't and shouldn't exclude all the other people who would like to grow cannabis economically and bring it to market at a fair price and get it to people that need it. Because that's what we're talking about, is people need cannabis. Cannabis is not a luxury for many people. It is for some, but not for most. Most people use it because it really helps them in their life, whether they know it or not. They like it. It makes them feel good. It helps them sleep at night. It does lots of good things for them, and that's called medicine. And that's fine. But some people really need it. Lots of people. I've met so many of them. There's 420,000 people. Well, there's more than that, but that's a number I like to throw out there. There was at one point 420,000. There's more now, of people that actually have doctors on board confirming their diagnosis and allowing them to use cannabis. 420,000 people that have got a doctor supporting them. There's hundreds of thousands more that can't find a doctor to support them that still require cannabis for life-saving conditions, for a quality of life that they don't otherwise have. I remember a town hall meeting with Mr. Blair, who came here and talked about how he's met people that need cannabis, and one woman in particular came and talked to him about how prior to having her friends tell her she should try cannabis, as a middle-aged woman who'd never tried it before, that her life was not a life. It's that she was constantly taking all of these pills, that her brain was like mush. She had no energy. She had no motivation. She had no goals. Her life was like a walking zombie. And then she got introduced to cannabis. And like for so many other people, cannabis gave her back her life. And that's the words that Bill Blair used in describing that. It had given her back her life. Why he continued to go on his campaign to maintain this legalization that deprives so many people who would otherwise have their lives given back to them? It's corruption. It's just bloody corruption. At the Cannabis Substitution Program, where we have supplied Health Canada with an extremely compelling application just to be able to continue doing what we have been demonstrating for almost 5 years, is not only safe, but is extremely effective for people. And yet, it's been 13 and a half months, almost 14 months now. In fact, what's the date today?
It's the 16th.
14 months ago today is when we filed that application. 14 months. Our application was filed under an emergency basis because we were facing eviction from a storefront we'd been in for a few months prior to that, based on a motion passed by the city that made us feel like they would support us and we should get a storefront and move our project indoors, and we did. But we were being evicted because the city wouldn't give us a license until we got permission from Health Canada. So we applied to Health Canada and the Federal Health Minister, Patty Haydu, under an emergency basis for just a temporary exemption from the Cannabis Act to allow us to continue what we had been demonstrating was safe and effective for almost 5 years, well, 4 years at that time. And still we're waiting. That application was simple. It was over 100 pages long. There was a lot to it. There was a 90-minute video of testimonials. There was all kinds of links to studies done by MJ Malloy, Dr. Malloy, and many others as well, showing the efficacy of cannabis as a replacement for opioids. There was all of that going on. Yet, it's not hard to process that application. It wouldn't take more than a couple, 3 days of actually looking at it properly. In fact, you'd probably get partway through it and go, oh my goodness, the good these people are doing has to be supported. Let's quickly get them that exemption they're asking for. That's what should have happened. The reason it didn't happen? Pretty clear. Our public servants at the federal level have made promises to rich people that they won't allow cannabis to be sold at a reasonable price. They won't allow all farmers to grow it. Only the select few that will pay large sums of money for a licensing fee, and only those that get picked by a federal government that's ripe with corruption. For some reason, my clock didn't go off. I'm noticing it's 4:20. So that's that for that. Let's end the corruption. And in case you haven't noticed yet, I have a guest coming in. This is 8 out of 10 Glenn from CannaMatch.ca. He's been my guest every week on the show here. We've done over 100 shows together.
Thank you very much, sir.
And he joins me for the 420 session every time. And I'm not smoking today, so you're going to have to smoke twice as much.
I'm going to have to smoke. Okay, I got this really big one, so we'll do that.
So you can smoke for me today.
All right. Since you don't do dabs, I'll do a dab for you first today, all right? And then
do a dab for me. You people at home can have a puff for me as well.
Pat's going to have a puff too. He's saying hi to you.
Oh, that's good.
Mr.
As you know, I usually start the show puffing.
Yeah.
And I do normally puff during the 420 session. But I'm old now, and I can't handle staying up late, and I stayed up too late the other night.
Some nice shatter.
Wow.
Yeah, I got this from Jimmy Scoden yesterday when Carly and them came a visit. We had a session in the storm. We got the cover, but man, we had to go in the house eventually because it was just sideways rain and the wind was blowing in. We couldn't even stay dry underneath there, right? But that was my very first session in a historic storm like that.
Wow.
So
that was quite a storm. I was visiting my mother yesterday, and outside of her sliding patio door, there was stuff completely horizontal. Zipping past the window.
Oh, yeah. And where I live right now, I don't know if everybody else knows, but we're totally cut off from the rest of Canada right now. We cannot get out. I could have almost took a boat here today.
How did you make it here?
Harris Road was cut off at Mount Lehman, and then I took it to the highway, and then the highway coming west is okay. But
so there is a way around to get to
west.
Mission.
Get to west.
But not to get out past Hope.
You can't past Abbotsford.
Past Abbotsford.
You can't go past Abbotsford.
And people coming in can't get past Hope.
Nope, they can't
get
past Hope.
In fact, on the other side of Hope, there's the mudslides.
Or even actually Merritt. Because there were some slides up on the Coquihalla also.
Right, yeah.
Right, and Merritt is all evacuated.
And for those wonderful people who've been messaging me and asking if we're safe here, I think we're all safe. We're just a little bit shocked by how we can't go where we want to go.
Yeah,
and
we
there's
can't get food in.
A lot of backyards full of water. I haven't noticed a food shortage yet, but they say it's going to be several days before we're opened up to the rest of Canada. So there's a lot of fruit and vegetables that come through that way that we're probably not going to have.
Stuff from Calgary, from Toronto, some groceries, dry goods and stuff like that that'll come in trucks. We won't be able to get that.
And if it's blocked from Merritt, then even from the Okanagan.
Right now they're all parked outside of Abbotsford on the side of the highway because they can't go any farther. The whole Mount Lehman, or not Mount McCallum, or where's...
McCallum Road.
No, where's Castle Front Park?
That's not that far yet.
But it's another M word, whatever. That's all flooded.
Yeah, I saw that.
The whole highway's gone.
Crazy.
And there used to be a water area before they built that up there, apparently. I was told that from somebody that's been around for a while, that whole area used to be water. Now it's sort of like reclaimed it again.
I see. Well, I imagine there'll be a lot of projects going to try to prevent that in the future.
It's from Abbotsford to Chilliwack. The whole highway is water.
Yeah. I've seen pictures.
It's amazing. And it's going to all upheave that. They're going to take so long to have to repave that, pull it up, and everything. It's going to be wild.
Yeah. Weather systems from the heat dome in the summer to the river, the atmospheric river in the fall. And we haven't had winter yet, so we'll see what winter's going to bring us.
And if you know the area, people go, well, maybe he could take the low heat highway. Well, no. Just outside of Agassiz, we had 3 separate mudslides blocking in people where they had to fly in the government helicopters, the big yellow ones, and rescue 275 people from the highway.
Yeah, with the wind howling and all sorts of stuff blowing around. They were...
But mind you, when I saw the news, those kids had big smiles on their face when they got off that helicopter, man. The kids were about 8 or 9 years old, and you could see the smile on their face. They got a ride in it.
It's a hell of an adventure.
Yeah, we're down.
I'm not sure their parents are smiling, having to leave their car behind, and there's probably some costs going to be incurred around some of this stuff.
Well, they said they'll be able to get them back out once they get them.
Yeah, once they get the mud off the highway.
Get the mud off the highway.
So what are they going to do? Fly the people back there to get to drive their cars?
Bus them. Probably clear a lane and get in there and be able to bus them back and stuff like that. But they can't even get home. They're all stuck in an evacuation center, right? You can't even get home.
Yeah. So unless they lived in Agassiz,
so we've never had 48 hours of rain like that ever. And they said it's been pretty historic. They're still
biblical is the word I was listening to.
Yeah, they're saying they're still counting the numbers and stuff like that. 5 feet of rain in 48 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
On the way to visit my mother yesterday, there was blueberry fields just completely flooded. There was houses under a few feet of water all the way along in the low-lying areas there.
Some areas in Merritt, some houses were floating down the river, the flood and stuff like that. Some trailers and some sheds were floating. And
so good on Mother Nature to wait until everybody had got their outdoor crops in before flooding it all out for them.
Yes.
And so most people at least had some reefer with them to get through the flood, which is good.
Wow, yeah.
It does help with a lot of things.
But no
on a positive, unrelated note, Chris Enns in Nova Scotia has had all of his charges withdrawn from the farm raid in 2020. So good on you, Chris, and I hope that's a trend, and that should continue.
Jerry and
I hope
the same thing, and Justin.
Yeah. We'll see what the courts are going to do with those people. I hope Jerry comes today because there's been some developments in his case. None of them good. Actually, I alluded to it last week a little bit. They've thrown out some of the affidavits that they put forward for not being expert witnesses.
Yeah, I was saying there was no expert witnesses at all. They didn't bring forward any expert witnesses.
On the Crown side.
On the
Crown side they didn't, but on Jerry and Justin and Pat's side they did. And some of that was thrown out. Some of it was thrown out because it was hearsay as far as the judge was concerned. So we'll see. The prosecution did not bring forth anything. I mean, they did have one witness. I think they called him an expert witness. So that was the only one. As far as the affidavits that were cross-examined, then I imagine if there were any others that we would have had those cross-examined as well. But the one that they had was a Health Canada official that started working there after Jerry Martin's case had begun. And so his answer to just about every question they asked was, that's outside of my knowledge. I wasn't working there at the time. I think he should have been labeled a hostile witness. He really didn't bring forward anything, but he also didn't bring forward anything damning as well. So
it's almost like taking the Fifth Amendment. I wasn't there. I don't know anything, right? Yeah.
And that's the witness that Health Canada put forward to hold up their case. Maybe because they don't think they have to put up very much, because that's kind of how it might go. You know, I mean,
that says they only.
We had to fight so hard. We had to raise so much money, spend so much time in court with so many expert witnesses and 3 fantastic lawyers to actually win the Allard case. That was not easy at all.
No.
And all that was about was sick people wanting to have the right to have cannabis grown for them by a friend, a designated grower, or to grow it for themselves. These are not tough issues. How can the courts even struggle with that at all? Why would it be a tough thing to prove that people deserve the right to grow some medicinal plants for themselves?
That'll keep them healthy too.
The corruption is so rife in this world of ours because of the attempted prohibition of cannabis that we don't trust our governments. We don't admire our police officers. We're scared of them. That the whole world is upside down with respect to how public servants treat the public, and most of it stems from the corruption of the prohibition of cannabis. When you try to prohibit a plant that saves people's lives and gives them a sense of well-being, gives them some euphoria while providing the medical cannabinoids to help with whatever can... That is so corrupt that you end up with a completely upside-down world where you've got people lying through their teeth constantly. We've got a medical association here in Canada that constantly lies through their teeth. I want to read something to you that happened here. We had the CBC in London, Ontario, go and interview Mary McCarty in London, Ontario, and many of the people in her lineup, because of what she's doing there in taking the cannabis substitution program there. Mary says that she told them all kinds of wonderful things, and that many of the people in the lineup gave very, very powerful testimonies as to what was going on with them in using cannabis to get off of opioids. And I want to read the article to you, and I want to tell you how I captioned it to start with. I wrote that the writer of this article did not do a good job of finding the dozens of peer-reviewed studies by Dr. M.J. Malloy and many others that show the efficacy of cannabis, especially high-dose edibles, in replacing opioids. Cannabis has saved many from opioid addiction. And I personally know probably hundreds of people, definitely many dozens of people, that'll tell me that cannabis saved their life. That they were addicted to opioids or other street drugs or alcohol, and cannabis literally saved their life. So here's what they wrote with the CBC. It starts out not too bad, but then I'm not happy with it. And I will be writing a letter to the person that they quoted here. So it starts out, program giving out free cannabis to help opioid users in London, Ontario, met with skepticism. Every Tuesday, Mary McCarty and a group of volunteers set up a small table outside a London, Ontario church to hand out free cannabis and cannabis edibles to a line of people that often runs well down the block. She's part of a group called the Cannabis Substitution Project, a volunteer-run organization that hands out free cannabis and cannabis edibles to people who use drugs. The group claims high-dose edibles, as much as 100 milligrams of THC served in baked goods, and it's more than that, can serve as a treatment and replacement for opioids and other drugs. The cannabis is donated and paid for by private citizens. McCarty and other volunteers have been handing out in London since April, with similar initiatives in Halifax and Vancouver. And there's also one in Victoria, and there's also one in Sudbury. I said, you know what? London needs one of these, McCarty said. It's ridiculous what's going on. She said she's seen firsthand how cannabis has changed the lives of people suffering from addiction. Mary was our head baker here in Vancouver for quite a while, and she has seen firsthand the value of what we're doing here for sure. People come and thank us all the time, she says. But experts say evidence is lacking. Well, I guess it depends which experts you're talking to. Evidence supporting the claims is scarce, a researcher says. I'm not aware of any evidence to suggest that it would be effective as a substitute for opioid-related dependence and addiction, said Stephen Laviolette, professor in the School of Medicine and Dentistry at Western University in London. So if you've had personal experience with cannabis having helped you with opioid addiction, maybe you should drop Mr. Laviolette a little line and let him know that it has helped you, because apparently he's not aware of any evidence that it's helped anybody with opioid addiction. Well, I don't know what kind of research he's done, but it certainly wasn't anything to do with Mr. M.J. Malloy. Laviolette's research focuses on neurobiological and developmental mechanisms underlying various psychiatric disorders, including opioid addiction, and he said high doses of THC may even be counterproductive in trying to give up opioids. Well, we certainly haven't heard any of that from our people. THC has been shown to cause overactivation of addiction pathways in the brain, he said. It could make it even worse, because THC would be ramping up the brain's addiction pathways and could potentially make problems like relapse and withdrawal an even greater issue for people suffering with opioid dependence. Yet he hasn't had any evidence of that, or to the contrary, and he certainly never talked to us or anything to do with what Mr. Malloy has done.
And the evidence is just a few kilometers away from him. If Stephen would get out of his office at the university and go down and see this and start talking to people, then he would be aware of it, right? He's sitting in his office in his little cubicle or whatever, thinking that the world just goes the way that he thinks it is.
Well, he's a member of the Canadian Medical Association. He's of dentistry or whatever. And he's just towing the party line when it comes to that, because we have like 5 years of lots of evidence and numerous peer-reviewed studies, dozens and dozens of them, that came out just from Dr. M.J. Malloy, and there's dozens more that we've sent to Health Canada as part of our application. So I don't know where he's not looking, but he's not finding what is there to be found quite easily.
He's living in a colored bubble.
He is,
see anything, can't see out of it.
Rose-colored glasses, not green-colored glasses.
Yeah, I know.
But he said that doesn't mean cannabis products can't be useful to help treat addiction. Well, it's good that he said that, at least.
Yeah.
He has conducted research into the use of cannabidiol, CBD, another compound found in cannabis, in treating amphetamine addiction. We are able to show that it quite literally blocked the activation of these drugs on the dopamine neurons. So he's saying it activates it for opioid and deactivates it for methamphetamines. So the neurons would stop firing in the presence of CBD, he said. That has really strong implications for CBD as an anti-addiction treatment. And the Cannabis Substitution Program does give out CBD in many forms as well.
And your plants have CBD in it also.
Yeah.
Even in the stuff that you're smoking, it's just not...
There's always some there.
Yeah.
He said there has been promising research in the United States about CBD as a potential aid in treating opioid addiction as well. So a big contradiction going on there. And, I'm going to be writing him a letter for sure.
A few people are going to be, I think. It looks like...
He said, while THC may not be an effective treatment for opioid addiction, it may be helpful with some of the symptoms of opioid withdrawal, like nausea and tremors. Yeah, well, it's very helpful for people going through withdrawal. It helps them sleep through it in most cases if they have enough of it. And we've had many, many people get through withdrawal with the use of cannabis high-dose edibles.
And the only other way that they would get rid of their nausea and tremors is by using again. right? If they didn't have the cannabis.
And that's what happens. People try to get through withdrawal. It's like going through hell, and most of them don't succeed, especially the first time. They go back out and get some more opioids to kill the pain.
Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but this doctor is a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for Drug-Free Kids Canada, which is a lobbying group that is seemingly entirely paid for by pharmacists, drug companies, and the police. But that may have nothing to do with it. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I thought that as soon as that reporter asked this guy for his opinion, his first thought was, let's go negative with this. He didn't even do any research because this is what the reporter wants.
Yeah, he should have said, get back to me tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll do some
And
research.
he would have spent 24 hours just Googling cannabis and opioid addiction. And he would have come up with all kinds of good information.
But when you're
many of it peer-reviewed.
When you're east of the mountains, that's a lot of the Eastern Canada people's attitude about cannabis, right? I really noticed the difference between British Columbia and cannabis. Cannabis and the rest of Canada.
He says, but it's putting a bandage on the problem. How does getting through withdrawal put a bandage on the problem? How does dealing with the drivers of addiction, like pain, depression, lack of sleep, how does that just put a bandage on it? So
I would
he's
think
full
that
of crap.
The bandage is for tonight. It'll depend if that person tomorrow goes into rehab because they had that night, right? And so it's kind of a bandage to get them over to the next day.
But it's not just a Band-Aid at all. This has been a cure for lots of people. It has gotten people off of opioids, many, 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 many of them.
But if they choose to do it,
he said it's not solving the underlying addictive properties. Well, the underlying addictive properties, I'm not sure what that means. I like to talk about the drivers of addiction, the reasons people continue to use once they've tried it. The vast majority of people that try opioids don't continue to use it. Only about 1% of people end up continuing on and getting to the point where they consider themselves addicted because they're going to have to go through withdrawal to get off of them. Most people in high school, in college, or in their younger years will try opioids in some form, and they don't stay on them because they don't have those drivers for addiction that are there with people who have suffered trauma throughout their lives, who are suffering pain and depression and lack of sleep and all those other things. He said it's not solving the underlying opioid-related changes in the brain. And I don't really know what that means either. What I do know is it has helped people replace the use of opioids and get off of them. So that's what he had to say. Supporters say they've seen those effects firsthand. And this reporter was at Mary's giveaway, interviewed numerous people in the lineup, was given great testimony by lots of those people. None of those made it into there except for one, which is coming up. To be honest, weed will never cure dope sickness, said Stefan Nickel, outreach director at Impact Church and a supporter of the substitution program, but it does help people sleep through a day of it. Well, I'm not sure what makes him an expert, but he hasn't seen what I've seen, that's for damn sure, and he doesn't think it can cure dope sickness. I have seen it. We have 266 members of our program. Many of them we first met dope sick. Mm-hmm. And they have used our program to get off of those drugs, and they're now looking healthy, smiling, living healthy lives, and thrilled that they're no longer using opioids.
Yeah.
So,
I've heard those people say
this is a biased article that did not tell the truth about what was discovered during that day of interviewing witnesses and interviewing Mary. Mary also said a whole bunch of good things to this reporter that did not make it into the article. Word is caught on that edibles are available, and while volunteers are only doing handouts for about 2 hours per week, as many as 200 people line up. McCarty said the next step is a permanent storefront location in London to help provide low-barrier access to cannabis for people who can't afford to purchase from other retailers. She plans to move to Winnipeg soon and intends to start another program. And that's the end of the article. So I will be contacting the writer of that article. I will be contacting Mr. Laviolette. And, at least giving them my opinion and my knowledge, what I've learned, doing what I've done, and see if I can educate them a little bit. But
apparently Mary says that this reporter was a person who lived on the street as well.
I see.
Yeah.
The CBC here in Vancouver has never come and done a story on us. The CBC in Quebec came here and did a story on us, interviewed a number of people, and went back to Quebec and ran that story, but it never ran here. there's a CBC reporter here that I send regular updates to, who has asked me to do that. Never been here to see us, never done a story on us.
Wow.
The mainstream media doesn't want to cover what we're doing, which is crazy, isn't it? I mean, what we're doing is breaking Canada's criminal law to hand out high-dose cannabis edibles, and in legalization, they'll only need to let you have 10 milligrams at a time in a flippin' chocolate bar. 10 milligrams might be the right place to start if you're going to try using cannabis edibles, but it's certainly not where almost anybody ends up. And people that are using it to replace opioids need far more than that. And people that are using it to deal with serious pain and health issues need far more than that. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry, not the reporter.
Oh, not the reporter.
No.
She's talking about the person
Steven.
that... yes,
Steven, sorry.
Stefan,
yes.
I see. Well, maybe it didn't work for him. It doesn't work for everybody. Nothing really works for everybody. Everybody's so different. One of the big problems we have here is that people eat too much and then don't want to continue to try it.
Yes.
You can eat too much. We warn everybody about that. Try not to do that. Just because you ate too much once doesn't mean that eating the right amount won't help. It will. People find the right amount, the right dose for them, and it almost always works for people. But there is an issue with people not knowing how to use it properly, and it's a personal journey. We have some knowledge of how it's helped all of these different people. We've seen it in action. We do keep track of everybody that takes cannabis for a substitution program, as to how much they're taking, what types they're taking, all of those sorts of things. But we're not experts in being able to guide people as to what's going to work for them, other than to say, start low, go slow, wait an hour, hour and a half, maybe even up to 2 hours. I know people that have taken large amounts of high-dose edibles and felt nothing for the first 2.5 hours, and then they kicked in. So start low, go slow with it, and see what works. And probably you're going to figure out a dose that you like, that works for you, that'll help you sleep, that'll deal with your pain issues or anxiety or depression, whatever it is. You will probably find a dose that works. Most people do. But that is our biggest issue here, is that a lot of people, even though we warn them and we say start low and go slow, we give them a bag with 420 milligrams of high-dose edibles, and in some cases, before they know any better, they'll just eat them all because they're hungry, they're in pain, they start eating what's in the bag, then maybe they start feeling high and they've got a little bag
because they're hungry,
or they eat it all at once because they're hungry. But that does happen fairly regularly here, no matter how strongly we try to advise people against that, and that is the big issue. But for people who try it properly and find that right dose, it is a miracle. It is a godsend, and it really helps people get off of opioids, which is a very tough thing.
Ron McNabb said he's going to send these two guys some stuff too.
Yeah, I think lots of people should.
Yeah.
So it's. It's
sad that people have this closed mind.
Yeah, I closed the thing. I don't make a mistake on his name, but Mr. Laviolette, he's at the University of London, I think that was.
Western
University of London. And he could use a letter, and the writer of that article, look it up on CBC.
Mary's calling us.
Mary's calling us. Well, answer it.
Should we answer it? All right, let's answer it.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Put her on speaker.
Oh, she's on speaker. You're live.
So how's it going?
Closer to the microphone.
Okay. So what are you calling for? What do you want to say?
I would like to correct. Yeah, it's going good.
Okay. What do you want to correct?
I wanted to say Stefan uses our edibles.
Right.
All the time he uses our edibles. Stefan isn't educated on it at all. He just started getting educated on cannabis.
Right. How did he end up getting in the article?
Because the reporters wanted to talk to him as well, because he works with the missions down there and the church people. Right.
And why wouldn't they have put in some of the interviews with other people? I mean, do you think that reporter was trying to do a hit piece on us?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not happy what he said, because there was a lot more I said, as well as about Trudeau.
Right.
Trudeau stealing it from the poor and giving it to the rich.
Right.
He didn't even put that in the article.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty bad article, really. I mean, it's nice to get some coverage on it. It does give us an opportunity to speak to it. But yeah, I wasn't pleased with that article at all. There's this guy that's got degrees, and he's the one that people are going to be, taking heed of because, he's got some degree, and he's talking out his ass. And,
Exactly.
Okay, so
I just wanted to correct that as well as just say hi to everybody. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Mary. We miss you, Mary.
I miss you guys.
Were you there today for the project? How did it go?
250 people.
I didn't go today. William's the leader now of the pack.
Right.
My feet are really, really bad again, so I'm having trouble walking.
I see. You'll have to tell William to message me on Tuesdays before. Oh, he did?
250 people. He's in the comments.
Oh, he's in the comments. Oh, yeah. Thanks, William.
And thanks, Glenn, for watching the comments.
Yeah, very good. And all the best to what you're going to do in Winnipeg, Mary.
Yes, I'm getting excited. I won't probably be able to do anything for a while, but I got plans. I got ideas.
Well, and we'll see who steps up and wants to help you there. And, I imagine people will. So good luck with all that.
I'm hoping the radio guy gets a hold of you who messaged me today. He wants me on his show. I think you'd be better on the show than me.
Well, I don't know, but, either one of us. I have full confidence in you, Mary.
Both of you.
I told him to reach out to you, so hopefully he does.
All right. And it's a morning show, so I imagine you'll maybe call in the morning or something.
Yeah, well, he knows Vancouver's different time, so.
Right.
And also, I had somebody reach out from Quebec that's going to be getting a hold of you. He wants to start a CSP in Quebec.
Very good.
In Quebec City, he says.
Wonderful. The more the merrier. We need them in every town in Canada here.
Yep.
And,
cool.
Corona, Ontario is wanting to start a program as well. I sent them your way. She was going to message you.
Cool.
She works with mental health there.
I see. Very cool. Yeah, always willing to consult with anybody that wants to start what we're doing. That's a wonderful thing, and I'm hoping that there's more that'll do that, because the more of these projects that there are going on across Canada, the quicker we're going to get some sort of a positive response from Health Canada. So,
exactly, and I want the news media to reach out. That's why I think it's so important they get a hold of you and put you on their shows.
Yeah,
I think they're scared of you, Neil. They're scared of the education you'll give them.
Well, we don't know what it is exactly that's scaring off the mainstream media from covering what we're doing here. Part of it is probably because they want to have advertising dollars from the legal cannabis industry, and they don't want to upset those people. But I think there's more to it than that. I think that maybe the mainstream media is invested in maybe the treatment industry, which is also an industry that is just stealing so much tax dollars and personal people's money to not properly treat people, to keep them going back and forth into treatment because they're making a ton of money on it. If you watch the movie Body Brokers, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So maybe the mainstream media are invested in the treatment industry. I'm not sure what's going on, but I know that we've got a really big story going on here. We've got hundreds of people that have gotten off of the hard drugs using cannabis high-dose edibles that are not allowed by the Canadian government. That is a huge, huge story. And there's a real story as well as to why the mainstream media doesn't want to cover what we're doing.
And there's a new movie,
well, there's a young girl that gave a testimonial. She has been clean for, this week would be her 12th week off of all hard drugs. She finally got her own apartment now and is getting her children back.
Wow.
That's
awesome.
The story that needs to be told. I mean, that's what the mainstream media should be reporting on.
And she did do a testimonial to him, and he didn't say a word about her.
Right. Yeah. So that really shows where their biases are when they put in that article what they did, and they don't put in the things that they had that would have supported what we're doing. So write that guy some letters. We'll write him some letters too. And
as well as Roxanne, the lady that runs Mamos, gave a testimonial on how she notices a big difference in the neighborhood after Tuesdays.
So all of that should have been in that article.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's not really speaks to the level of corruption that's going on throughout the media and throughout our governments. My show, the theme of my show today is corruption, Mary, in case you don't know.
I know how corrupt they are. I'm going to actually call him myself and tell him how displeased I am on the article and that he better get a hold of you and get the truth.
Right, and I'll get a hold of him with the truth anyway, so he won't have trouble hearing from me, that's for sure.
Oh, that's for sure. That's all good.
Well, thanks for the cameo. I appreciate having you on the show, Mary.
Yeah, take care, guys. I miss you.
Good luck in Winnipeg. You're going there, what, Saturday?
Saturday I head out, yeah. As well as when somebody sent me the post of the CBC write-up, she put on there that we're a star, and somebody else messaged somebody in Winnipeg saying we were coming to Winnipeg soon.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
You're a force.
So the word is spreading already in Winnipeg, and it's going to be awesome.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mary. I love you. You take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, love you guys too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, Mary. Mary's doing such fine work there.
Another thing about corruption, there's a new movie on Disney Channel called
Dope Sick.
Yes,
I saw that.
About the opioid and how they told the doctors that this stuff was safe and all that, and it was really good for you or whatever. I don't know. I haven't watched the movie yet, but
yeah, I'd need to see the movie to see what their slant is.
I have a Disney account. You have that smart TV. I'm sure we can get Disney on there. I can just load you into my account, and one night you can watch the movie. Right?
That'd be good. I would like to see what they have to say.
I was going to watch it too.
Yeah, and they're probably talking about the opioid crisis and the drivers of that opioid crisis, which is Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies, but primarily Pfizer is the one that was convicted successfully in court for having done what they did, that have paid huge fines and lawsuit settlements to people. And it's a real horrific story of greed and no ethics in addicting our people, our population of people, onto these opioids so that they can make a bunch of money off them. It is absolutely disgusting when you look at the carnage that has resulted from people being addicted to opioids, the amount of cost to our society, the amount of cost to individual families, and now with the overdose death crisis, because a lot of people get addicted to opioids because their doctors put them onto opioids, and then they're taken off quicker than they should be, and still suffering and jonesing, and they go and find more without their doctor's support. They get them from family members, they get them from co-workers. Sometimes they'll steal them out of people's medicine cabinets. They end up cycling downwards and downwards. Many of them end up in poverty. Many of them end up losing their relationships, losing their jobs, losing their housing. And it is a horrible, horrible thing that has happened to so many people, and all driven by greed and corruption by a bunch of unethical pharmaceutical companies. And yet here we are still fighting governments to allow for low barrier access to cannabis and high dose edibles to address this crisis in the face of all of this. It is just so heartbreaking, really, that, I've been 20 some years in trying to fight for legalization, and I did that because it was so clear to me that this was wrong.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about it. When I did a little bit of looking into the prohibition of cannabis 20 years ago, it was an absolute no-brainer. This stuff is a wonderful, natural, herbal remedy for many people, for many things, and the fact that it's prohibited with the criminal law to serve the interests of greedy pharmaceutical companies is just one of the biggest stories going, and it made me quit my job. And here we are a couple decades later of having successfully exposed the corruption, having successfully spoken to the benefits of cannabis for so many things, the harms of prohibition in so many ways. And yet here we are. We're still not there.
Still there, yeah.
Offered a form of legalization that isn't, that's nothing more than a corporate takeover, a hostile takeover, or attempted takeover of the cannabis industry. $7 to $9 estimated billion industry just in British Columbia alone. And the governments have conspired to work with a bunch of wealthy corporate bastards to put in what they call legalization so that, sure, anybody can walk into one of their stores and buy cannabis. So in that sense, it's legal. You can have cannabis on you, but not illegal cannabis. It has to be cannabis you either grew for yourself with your 4 plants or got from a government store. And who knows where they're going to be in the future, whether they start cracking down on that.
I think you're allowed to have something gifted.
Yeah, you can have some gifted to you.
Yeah.
And hopefully they don't ever try to crack down on that, where you have to be able to prove where your cannabis came from. You know?
How are they going to do that?
Oh, they can do that.
Well, they have genetics, but they would have to...
Genetics.
Yeah, they'd have to have the genetics from where it came from. So if you don't tell them where it came from, my buddy who has an MMAR or ACMPR or whatever group for me and gave me some.
When you try to bring in fake legalization into a really corrupt system in the first place, you end up with a whole bunch of loopholes and ways around things and bad shit going on. Yeah. So that's what they've been doing there. Anyway.
So you know, even the planet could be in a better place if we were growing hemp instead of taking down trees, right?
Lots of people have said cannabis can save the world.
Yeah,
the world needs saving. And I think it can do a lot to save the world.
Yeah, it takes in 4 times the amount of carbon dioxide than a tree does, and we can grow it 3 to 4 times a year.
So it deals with climate change, it deals with the opioid crisis, it deals with people's personal health and well-being.
Yeah.
It deals with so much as an industrial product.
Yep.
Cannabis is carbon neutral or carbon minus, actually, for being used in building materials and other things like that.
Fuel, oils.
Fuel is probably the big reason.
Yep.
Cannabis is 10 times more efficient than corn as a source of ethanol fuel.
Yep.
Corn being the big one that they use all the time. Cannabis is 10 times more efficient than that. So yeah, it's a very, very corrupt world that we're living in, and the cannabis situation is the real way to understand that. It's my leading example of how we're not free here, and freedom is one of my big issues. I think that when people are not feeling like they're free, they act in self-destructive ways, they act in socially destructive ways. There's a lot of problems that come when people don't feel free.
Yeah.
And how can you feel free in a world where you could simply scoop up a piece of a plant on your way to work in the morning and have some cop find you with it, and now you're under arrest. Adela Wisdom in Missouri is facing long jail time there because the authorities in her neck of the woods found some wild cannabis, hemp, growing on the outskirts of her property, and she's been tormented by the potential of jail time and lots of it. They're very backwards in her part of the United States, and so it's just the most ludicrous thing. It makes zero sense. That was the first thing that I tried to do when I was looking into this 20 years ago, was try to make some sense out of it. I wanted to use logic. I wanted to understand, why would they be using so much effort and power and money to try to prohibit this plant? I mean, it must make sense somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It didn't make sense anywhere you looked, except
into
into the profits of a bunch of people, and including governments that want to control people and would much rather have you drunk and not thinking straight than using cannabis and having your senses enhanced and having some contemplative time. So, I'm still at it all these years later. And we've made a huge difference with respect to public opinion. Even in the courts, we made a huge difference over that time. We've won 15 out of 16 of the major court cases that have been brought, against our community or vice versa. And yet here we are. We're still dealing with a really corrupt legalization scheme, a continuing overdose crisis that is not allowed to have cannabis, high-dose edibles, easily accessed for it. And on and on and on it goes.
Yeah. One of our viewers is saying that she was her family was removed from Merritt. They're now unsure if they can return home. She was saying
not because of cannabis prohibition.
No, because of the flood.
Because of the flood.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a while. They evacuated the entire town of Merritt because the water treatment center was compromised. And it wasn't going to be healthy for people to drink the water.
There'll be a lot of water damage too.
And that treatment center is undergoing a lot of damage as a result of the flooding, and so it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while for a lot of things.
And they just, I know Jesse's story a little bit. They're friends of Doug and Michelle's and stuff like that. And they just moved to Merritt recently. It took a while to find a place because of the housing shortages and that stuff. That they find a place and
there might be a number of people that don't want to move back to Merritt. I mean, if floods are going to become the norm, Merritt is a terrible place to live. It's just right there in the valley, down low, right by the river that's there.
Comes right down.
And mountains all around it. So if there's a a huge rainstorm, all that water is running down the mountains, running into that river, and it's going to flood.
Well, you see, Mayor, when you're driving on the on the Coke, and you're up top there, you see it down below,
both, Both directions in that you come. There it is, way down at the bottom there. Yep. It's just a floodplain. Yeah. So, people shouldn't live in floodplains.
No.
They shouldn't live on the coast.
Kamloops is like that too, and then Revelstoke is like that. They're all in the valleys, right? Yeah, that's how I explained crossing in to go to Calgary. When people ask you how, I said you go up and down 3 times, right? First you get Kamloops, and then you got Revelstoke, and then you have the third one. I can't remember now.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But people need to think about how they're living. Where was I watching in England? England, it's this little funny-looking island in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah,
there.
that place, yeah.
The Queen
lives there, doesn't
it? It loses a lot of coastline, like, on a constant basis. The erosion there is incredible. It has gone, miles and miles inland. There's been lots of little towns lost along the way.
I heard about 1.5 meters, almost a month, because of the permafrost is melting.
I see.
Where they built stuff on the permafrost, it's now melting. Yeah, so
there you go. You can find out all kinds of stuff on this show.
Yeah, yeah.
And it looks like Jerry's not going to make it. He's half an hour past his time.
It could be because I know that the highway was closed in Richmond, which is probably the number 99 is probably the one he has to take from Delta. So he might not be able to make it here.
We'll find out down the road somewhere why Jerry couldn't make it in. Yeah. But we'll go on the assumption that he's not coming now, and now he'll walk through the door like he did last week. And Jerry Martin, I alluded to it a little earlier in the show, was a dispensary owner in Whitewood, Saskatchewan, and a fellow that wanted to give back to his community and found that was a good way to do it for him with the connections that he had and what he was able to do. And so he set up a medical cannabis dispensary using all of the best practices and protocols for trying to run it in a way that the government would approve, hoping that he would be included into the mainstream business place at some point soon, especially when Trudeau came along and started talking about legalization and how the medical patients would be well served by legalization. Not. And so he felt that he would be grandfathered in, and he tried to do it properly. And yet when Trudeau brought in legalization, that included a bunch of letters going out to dispensary owners telling them to close their doors. And I like to stop there every time, because if you think about that, and for those of you that have heard me say this a number of times, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but for those people who haven't heard it, seriously, you got to think about that. You're running a illegal cannabis dispensary. You're helping 1,000 or more people that are sick and suffering get access to this miraculous herb. They're in tears thanking you for it on a regular basis. And now the government tells you that because of legalization, you have to stop helping these people? Like, give me a break. That's cruel. That is absolutely cruel. That nobody with a sense of conscience could or would do that, and did not do that, and Jerry did not do that. Because, think about it. You're illegal before you got that letter. You've been illegal for the entire time, and once you opened your dispensary, and you know it. Dispensary owners know what they're up against. They know that there's a threat, a real serious threat, that they could be arrested and lose their liberty, lose their possessions, and yet they still go ahead and do that because they believe in it enough. It's not about the money for these people. Some dispensary owners did get into it for the money to start with. I went and met a bunch of those when I went to all of the ones in Vancouver when Vancouver decided to regulate these illegal dispensaries. I found out that none of them were going to close their doors. All of them applied to spend over $30,000 just on licensing fees after losing several revenue streams to try to be part of legalization. Why? That was my big question to these dispensary owners as I went around to consult with them to see what their situations were. The reason that they all applied to spend over $30,000 on licensing and to have 7 revenue streams taken away from them was because it wasn't about the money for them. Even if it was in the beginning, it wasn't anymore. Those people needed them. They were helping people. They were good Samaritans saving people's lives. And so when you're told by a corrupt government that you're going to be illegal if you don't close your illegal dispensary, it's just another threat. It's just another in all of the different things to worry about as a dispensary owner, but you're not going to stop helping those people. You're not going to turn your back on those people. You've already proven yourself. You've already proven that you're going to stay open in the face of threats by the government to help people. And that's what Jerry did. That's what so many of them did. Jerry, along with a couple others in Saskatchewan, were raided because of legalization, shut down, charged, and they've been bullied ever since. Jerry spent so much time being threatened by the prosecutor, being offered deals of pleading guilty to be able to maybe get some of his stuff back, or maybe not serve so much time in jail, or whatever it was. But they flippin' tortured that guy, and I witnessed it firsthand, and the effects on him as a human being, having that happen to him, having them come and steal his house, his bank accounts, his cars, shut down his medical cannabis dispensary, deprive him of being able to help the people that he'd been helping, and then call him a criminal and threaten him with jail time on top of it. That is really, really hard to take. Really hard to take. I don't imagine anybody that hasn't been there can really imagine what that must be like. But we've managed to watch Jerry go through it for a couple of years on this program. He was arrested and shut down 5 years ago. 5 years. And he still hasn't got a verdict. He still thinks he's going to jail. We're still waiting for a judge to process all of the evidence, or some of the evidence that she was given. And in the meantime, Jerry is still suffering. Cruel and unusual punishment, to say the least. Jerry and Pat Warnicki and Justin Siemens, other dispensary owners in Saskatchewan, put together a constitutional challenge on their raids. And that's the court proceedings that is happening at this time. If they're unsuccessful, then there's a pretty good chance there will be continued court proceedings as they try to go after Jerry and Pat and Justin as criminals. This is entirely disgusting, and we'll see what the courts rule on this one. It is, in my opinion, the biggest case that's going on in Canada for medical cannabis advocates and consumers. We're all waiting, holding our breath almost, except we shouldn't do that because they're probably not going to come up with any fast decision, even though the judge said she would.
They're in court tomorrow.
I believe they're in court tomorrow.
Yeah, Pat's telling me this.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because I wanted to get that from Jerry today. I know there's been some changes. This isn't the final day, apparently. There's still a couple more. Good to see you, Pat, by the way.
They're going to be going to court to fight those...
I see. They're going to argue with the...
argue with the judge's decision.
Right, to toss information.
Yeah.
Toss evidence.
Yeah. Pat says
it's going to go on for a long time.
He said thanks.
I love you guys, and I really hope that this is resolved in your favor, and I'll be so disgusted if it's not. Mm-hmm. But, thank you for continuing on, Jerry, Pat, Justin.
From all of us.
From all of us, from all medical consumers, from everybody in the movement. We really appreciate you guys putting up with what you're putting up with, going through the expenditure that you're going through. It's horrendous that our government is forcing this. There should not be any charges against people that we're trying to help save people's lives and bring them a better quality of life, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. The whole system is actually what's under a microscope right now. Jerry's case is putting our system under scrutiny. And if he doesn't get if they don't get a good verdict on this, that'll be really damning to the society that we're living in and the level of corruption that's going on here. It's costed already millions of dollars. Can you imagine? Millions of dollars have been spent. Yeah. Over 40 appearances in courtrooms so far. Every one of those appearances involving just a big electric bill, a judge's nasty salary, all of the court workers and what they get paid. So much money for every court appearance that we are paying for. Mm-hmm. The prosecutor, now Jerry's on his second prosecutor, after almost 5 years. The first prosecutor probably billed $1 million for the time that he spent on Jerry's case. Now a second prosecutor had to get up to speed and billing all kinds of time that we're paying for. Again. Yes. Again and again and again and again. Yep. Us taxpayers in Canada are the ones footing the bill for the attempt to over-regulate and prohibit cannabis. It's not the corporations, it's not the politicians. They're using our money. These corporate cannabis entities that are trying to rake in millions and billions of dollars off the Canadian public by overcharging for crappy cannabis. They are raping us, and they are not paying for the protection racket that's being run for them. How fantastic is that? You're a business. You want to have the competition put out of whack, and you get taxpayers' money doing that for you, and police resources and courts doing that for you. This is obscene. This is completely obscene. This is so crazy, I think I'll quit my mainstream job and go full-time. Oh, I already did that. Maybe some of you want to do that too.
Yeah.
If you do, the universe will help you out. It'll take care of you. It did for me. For 20 years, I've managed to do quite well. I've not had to borrow any money from people, and I don't live off of donations, by the way. I've never asked for donations from people. I'm not an activist that ever says, look, I'm in trouble, can you guys send me money? I've never done that. I hope I never do that. I don't live off of donations. I look after myself. I've got some of my own money. I've got some family money, and I do things for money lots of times. But, you know, this has cost so many people so much, and it is so bloody wrong that it needs to stop. And I don't know how to get it to stop. If I did, I would have done it by now. I try everything I can think of. This is my best plan. Educate you people, get all you people to do whatever you can do. This takes an entire planet of people to do this. It's only a small percentage of the planet that's involved in the disgusting prohibition, but it's going to take a lot more people to overturn that, because this small percentage of people that's involved in this have great leverage. They have great access to the powers that be, to our public servants, to the courts, to police. As I mentioned off the top, the corruption is huge. There are a lot of cops and city officials that are on the take right now because of cannabis prohibition and drug prohibition. A lot. It is really taking a huge toll on us. So, anyway.
Yeah. How about a brighter note?
Well, sure. On a brighter note, Jerry has not been doing nothing. Jerry is a motivated, determined human being that is going to give back one way or another, and he's got a new project. He did over 4.5 years of providing cannabis to his community, to sick people. That was wonderful. Since his arrest and being shut out of being able to do that, he's been on the course of trying to legalize the other plants that are out there that are psychedelics. So with mindtech.ca and microdelics.ca, you can check out those websites and see what Jerry's been up to. He is offering
right there.
These products here. Are they in the shot?
Yep.
They are different analogs of LSD, psilocybe, and DMT. Not illegal because of the way they've done it, but still able to be accessed, those particular plant medicines. Those are microdosing kits, because microdosing is very beneficial for people. You could do a few microdosing sessions all at once and have a bit of a macrodosing session if you want. That's up to you, as it should be. But, you know, this pursuit for the legalization of the psychedelics is something else that's very difficult to wrap your brain around.
Yeah.
It's like, why would they make these things illegal when after all of this time of having them illegal, we've now clearly been able to see that the psychedelics don't cause problems in our society. They don't kill anybody, or very rare anybody would be overdosing on psychedelics. Millions and millions of doses of psilocybe, LSD, DMT, ayahuasca, iboga, on and on it goes, have helped millions of people. There's all kinds of evidence that those things work for people that have PTSD, depression, anxiety, sleep disorders, pain. The list goes on. Obesity, addictions, on and on it goes. These things can be very beneficial to people in profound ways. And there's not much chance of abuse, not much chance of hurting yourself. With psychedelics, you do have to be careful about scene and setting. You do have to have some concern about that. It's not as benign as cannabis, for sure. So there should be some care taken. I mean, with cannabis, you don't need to really warn anybody about smoking cannabis. But when it comes to high-dose edibles, you do. And even concentrates can green people out. But when it comes to the psychedelics, there are issues with people that have some psychological problems that could aggravate those problems, but it can also help those problems. It depends on how it's done. It depends on the scene, the setting, whether you have a guide with you or not, those types of things. But for people that are suffering, and really suffering, with issues that those plant medicines can help with, they deserve access, don't they? It's nobody's business but yours what you're deciding to do for yourself, especially when you're in trouble, especially when you have lots of pain, lots of health issues, lots of mental health issues, and you want to find relief from that. It ain't nobody's business but yours what you do in doing that, unless you're harming somebody in the process. You can't be sacrificing babies to try to get rid of your addiction.
No, baby sacrifice.
No, don't do that. It doesn't help anyway. It just makes things worse.
People pissed
Then you
off,
have more mental health issues because babies are actually not somebody you should be killing. Anyway. That's ridiculous. And so is the whole prohibition of these substances.
Yeah.
We're natural beings on this planet. We're not born with an overseer other than parents. We're not born with a government official, right next to us, making sure we obey all the time. We have parents that try to teach us right and wrong. That's how nature provides these things. Nature provides that you're brought up in a place, because you arrive here with no knowledge at all. You're tiny. You don't have any skills of any sort. Your body doesn't even work hardly at all. You can't even walk yet. Can't talk yet.
No.
So you're kind of helpless when you first arrive here, and nature provides that you arrive in the care of custodians that care about you. That's the way it normally works. I know, Glenn, you were talking to me earlier today before we went on air about how you were in foster homes, and you didn't feel that love.
Nope.
That it was just a job for these people.
Exactly. They're there for 8 to 10 or 12
and
hours.
that's not typically how nature does it. Nature doesn't usually place kids into foster homes, although things do happen, and it does happen.
Mine wasn't even a foster home. It was a group home.
And this is something new in the modern age. I mean, it didn't used to be foster homes. I mean, the families would take care of people, or the churches would take care of children if they lost their parents, or things like that. But for the most part, the way it's supposed to work is that the person and persons that are charged with your growing up on this planet, they care about you. They care a whole ton about you. Mothers and fathers would sacrifice their lives in most cases for their children.
Or fingers.
Fingers. Yeah. And so many things that people will do for their children because they care about them.
Yeah.
They do their best. Now, parents aren't always good parents.
No.
A lot of times they've been mistreated themselves. And don't even understand how that's going to affect how they treat their own children until they have those children. And so kids are still generationally being abused and misused, but they have a way better chance of being taken care of properly within the confines of somebody who cares about them than they do when they're put into foster care or in an institution of some sort.
Yeah.
So
and that's what they've been doing with the Indigenous kids here. They're saying these foster homes are just like a residential school for these children.
in many cases, probably worse even.
Yeah. Yeah, and Indigenous people are going to be able to help us save the planet. They're saying their governments are saying that these people know how to do these things. They were doing it already, and their medicines and stuff. The plants that we call illegal now were helping their people. They probably didn't have those mental health problems and stuff like that because they were allowed to use these
I'm
things.
really hoping that the Indigenous community of Canada will, and there's many communities, will bring forward their expertise, will flex their muscles, will demand self-realization with respect to the plants. In the case of cannabis, although you shouldn't have to prove that there's been a history of use throughout, your culture to be able to have cannabis allowed, that's ludicrous as well. But especially with psilocybin and some of the other plant medicines, they do have a serious history of using of these things in beneficial ways in their culture. So it's going, I think, to be very difficult for the powers that be now in the world to be able to deny them use of these things. So I hope that they exercise the power that they have and that they flex their muscles and gain those rights, and then they extend them to everybody else.
It might not be so hard for them to not do it because there's somebody offering them a lot of money just to look the other way.
I know.
Right?
I know. That's going on. Yeah. There's quite a divide amongst the Indigenous groups in Canada with respect to cannabis legalization. Some of them want nothing to do with it. Some of them would like to do it on their own terms, and some of them are doing it on the Canadian government's terms.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how that all shakes down. But seriously, we need everybody to do whatever they can from whatever position in life they come from to try to stop what's going on with respect to our rights being stripped from us in accessing natural plants for our own well-being. We need to do this. We need to do this fairly quickly because we are moving into a surveillance state never seen before. The ability for people to be monitored and surveyed is incredible. And we need to establish our rights as best we can, instead of having them taken away like they are and continuing to be taken away, because the future does not look very rosy for people's rights with respect to how much control is being exercised over us by public servants on behalf of corporations.
It really sucks.
So that's what we got to do. Anyway, I think we've covered all these things.
See you next week.
I thank you so much for coming in. I see you're not wearing a Canucks shirt, and I don't even want to talk about it.
No, because they're playing tomorrow. I know, eh? I know. Well, maybe the soccer guys will do it for us.
I have learned my lesson.
Canada's playing soccer tonight, right?
I will never again have serious faith in any team that I support winning
Team
the ultimate.
And Edmonton playing at -15 with some snow against Mexico tonight.
What?
I know, eh?
Wow.
Yeah.
I still like sports. I know it's a distraction,
who's our
but
Canadian soccer guy, the dark guy. What's his name?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah. Well, he went to the Olympics and everything. He's really good at. He played for Vancouver too.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I should be able to tell his name. My expertise is in rights, freedoms, and cannabis.
Yeah.
Not so much in sports. I do know a little bit about the Vancouver Canucks, but not compared to most people.
No.
I like sports. It's a bit of a distraction, which I need sometimes, because if you're full-time on trying to be an activist, it can be very depressing. It takes a huge toll on people. And so I learned in the first year of quitting my job and trying to be full-time, trying to solve this issue, that you do need some distraction. Not all of the distractions. I mean, we live in a world where everybody's totally distracted, entertained,
TV,
confused.
Internet.
There's alcohol and all these other things that get people distracted. I need a little bit of distraction in my life. I choose sports for that, but mostly I have to stay focused on trying to solve the issue that I've chewed off for myself, because it's how I feel, what I believe in. It's where my passion is, and so that's what I'm doing.
I just want to say, go Team Canada for tonight.
Go Team Canada.
That's it, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go all the teams. The good news is that when my team loses, another team wins. And, there might be 100,000 disappointed Canuck fans, but there's 100,000 or more really happy Anaheim fans. And so, it's a trade-off. If my team's going to win and make me happy, that just means that the team they're playing against is not going to win. And so all those people are unhappy. So it's a balance. It's a trade-off. I don't really care. I've learned my lesson. I don't believe any team that I'm following is ever going to win the big prize. If they do, I'll be thrilled. But I'm not holding my breath for it. I'm not invested in it in any serious way. I'll love it if it happens, but I'm not going to hate it if it doesn't, because I think that's just a way of life for me anyway.
Yeah.
For people in Vancouver, we have so much good stuff in Vancouver.
We do.
Our teams don't get to win because
our soccer team wasn't doing so well until this new.
Well, they made the playoffs. We'll see what they do.
Well, they're in the playoffs right now. Yeah. Yes. All right.
Thank you, Glenn. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us.
I appreciate you too, my friend. Really, I do.
And so, this is where my passion lies. This is what I have to do. I'm a person that is driven by trying to do the right thing and by trying to be true to myself in what I am passionate about. And I'm passionate about freedom, and I'm passionate about counteracting the efforts of bullies to hurt people for greed, and that has led me to here. And here is being a rights activist with cannabis as my lead issue. And here is fighting for access to low barrier cannabis in all of its forms, and especially high dose edibles. And so what that's resulted in is myself addressing the overdose epidemic that came along almost 7 years ago now, by understanding through my efforts in a previous dispensary that I had called the Herb School, where we were right at Main and Hastings, where so many hard drug addicts reside. And we found out pretty quickly there that our high-dose edibles, our brownies and our cakes, would help people get through withdrawal and replace the use of those drugs. That information that I had, I could not keep to myself several years ago when the overdose crisis hit. At that time, I was still a cannabis activist. I was still advocating for dispensaries and low barrier access. And because of that, and because at that same time, the city of Vancouver decided that the 150 to 180 illegal dispensaries that were operating at that time could be licensed and should be licensed, that's what they did. But in doing so, their regulations took away several revenue streams, including edibles. No edibles allowed for sale in Vancouver's dispensaries prior to legalization. With my knowledge, thanks to what I had done at the Herb School for years, of understanding the value of cannabis, especially high-dose edibles for people on opioids, that led me to decide that we had to do something. We could not just allow high-dose edibles to be eliminated from the illegal dispensaries, or the soon-to-be licensed dispensaries, that in fact they needed to be more available and more easily accessible than they were being through those dispensaries. So I went first to VANDU, the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, the advocacy group for hard drug users here in Vancouver. And I put forward a proposition that we use their premises to hand out high-dose edibles for free to people that would take them. I got unanimous approval from VANDU to do that and to go to City Council and ask for their support. So I did that. I got nothing from the City of Vancouver. There was no follow-up questions. They let me present what I presented and walk away. I tried phoning different councillors, especially Kerry Jang, because he's a medical doctor. I got nowhere with Kerry. He would hang up on me. I got nowhere with anyone in City Council. Rob Laurie, a good lawyer friend of ours, agreed to accommodate me, or to come with me to present to the Vancouver Police Board. I thought it was important that we let the Vancouver Police know what we were doing in an effort to stop them from stopping us, mostly. So I presented the idea to them, just like I had done to Vancouver City Council. I got some handshakes and some thank yous. I didn't get any, yeah, we're not going to arrest yous, or, you know, yes, we're going to support yous. But they haven't arrested us, and they have basically supported us. From there, we started the program. We started going to VANDU once a week for a full year, every Saturday. Started with 100, went to 160, then I went to 200, then I went to 250. By the end of that first year, we were giving out 250 care packs, half a dozen high-dose edibles and a couple of joints per pack. After 2.5 years of doing, after that first year, we went to twice a week, by the way. So every Thursday and Sunday, we were going to VANDU for another 2.5 years. At the 2.5 year mark of the actual project, so another 1.5 years into doing twice a week, thanks to all the studies being released by Dr. M.J. Malloy, a UBC professor, the City of Vancouver passed a motion to allow for high-dose edibles and low-barrier access to cannabis to address the opioid crisis, and the removal of the exclusion zone of the downtown East Side Hastings corridor. We took some solace in that. We went and met with the councillor that put that motion forward, a group of us. We came to an understanding that we were going to go find ourselves a storefront. We were going to move our project from the sidewalk outdoors to inside a storefront. We found this space that I'm broadcasting from. We set up a beautiful little store. We started providing low-cost as well as no-cost cannabis. We turned our project into a program where the people that were taking part in getting care packs were registered as members. We capped it at 250 because we wanted to make sure we could sustain what we were doing. Everything's by donation here. We then started creating a waiting list of people that reached over 200 people. And we've been giving out high-dose edibles to those people ever since. And we needed to have low cost as well as no cost, because there's a large population of people that are addicted to opioids and street drugs that want off, that don't want to identify themselves as drug users, do not want to be seen as such, don't want to take part in a program where they're getting, free edibles to help them with their addictions. They need a place they can come into very discreetly, get some cannabis, and get out without showing ID, without having to write out anything for anybody, without having to qualify in any way. Low barrier access, that's what's important. And so that's what we've been doing. We were here for 3.5 months, when at the end of that 3.5 month period, we had finally discovered the way to get a license, which we needed, was through Health Canada. We tried through the province, but that's non-medical licenses, and that wasn't going to work. We couldn't comply with their regulations, and they wouldn't license us to do what we're doing. So we put in an application to Health Canada, a very compelling, comprehensive application that spoke very clearly to the benefits of what we were doing in saving people's lives. It's now been, and I would add that we added an emergency application just for a temporary exemption from the Cannabis Act to be able to continue until licenses could be issued. We haven't got it. 14 months later to today. It was September 16th, 2020 that we put that application in. Both of those applications in. And we're still waiting. We've had conversations with Health Canada. We had a conference call with them prior to Christmas last year. They said that they were working hard on it, that it would probably be early January and they would have that for us. I didn't realize they weren't talking about the coming January, as we're now coming to January a year later. Maybe they didn't even mean this January. We don't know. We'll find out. Since then, we've had other correspondence from them. They say every time that we just should be patient. It's complicated. And that they're working diligently on it. His team. There's a team of people working diligently on it every day. It makes no sense. It must be making money for somebody, because it makes no sense. Anybody with a high school education could look through our application and very quickly realize, because that's how we presented it, that's how we put it together, it is extremely clear and easy to assess. We're saving people's lives. We're helping to get them off of illegal street drugs that are killing them. We should be approved for licenses. We should certainly be approved for an exemption until we get licenses. We should get licenses for us and for our staff, but we should also get licenses for those people that have been supplying us. Everything is by donation other than the low cost, in which case we're purchasing. But we're purchasing from people that have been trusted by us for a long, long time. There's been no problems. We have the ability to test everything that we have here. We have a relationship with the Green Cross, a dispensary that invested lots of money in high-tech testing equipment, and they have a certified operator of that equipment. We can test everything. We do personally test all the things that come through here. Everybody we're dealing with is now a trusted source and should be licensed. But yet we wait. When we couldn't get our licenses, we applied a month and a half before we got evicted. They didn't come. We got evicted. The landlord didn't want to evict us. He likes what we're doing, but his lawyer advised him that he better evict us because the city was going to fine him large amounts of money. They could even seize his property. These are some of the tactics they use against landlords. All landlords in this city are afraid to rent to anybody that might be providing cannabis outside of the legal system. Their lawyers understand the threats. They're all up to speed now. It's very difficult to rent a place in Vancouver to have an illegal dispensary of any sort. And we're a different breed of dispensary. We're providing low barrier access. We're not about profit. We're about patients. We're about people that need cannabis. We're about trying to provide what people need to save their lives. We should be licensed. When we couldn't get that license, when the eviction actually happened, we bought an RV. We needed to be here where the store had been for 5 months now, because the people that we're serving in many cases have no contact information. They're living on the streets. They don't have cell phones. They're transient. They move around. We can't get a hold of them. We couldn't just close the store and be somewhere else trying to do the project. We couldn't go back to Vandu. For numerous reasons, that was not an option anymore. It was horrible to have all those people have to line up in the snow and in the rain and the wind and the cold and the heat. It was terrible. We were lining up for hours just to get a little care pack of some edibles. Most of them had mobility issues. Many people had such severe mobility issues they couldn't line up in the lineup. It wasn't able to be accessed by many of the most needy people because they couldn't stand in a lineup for hours. We couldn't go back there. I wasn't going to line people up on the streets again. We need a storefront. So I got an RV. We bought an RV, and the next morning after we got evicted, we were open in the RV. We've now been open in the RV for over a year. Parked in the exact same spot. We did get raided after 2 weeks by an anti-vending unit that didn't like our signs and the weed that we had displayed in the windows of the RV. But pretty soon the VPD recognized who we were, and they have backed off. They have not had any contact with us for almost a full year. We've had no raid of any sort since that one that was now over a year ago. We're parked in the same place in a city where you're only allowed to park for 2 hours at any meter. We pay the meter all day, every day. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month we pay because we just don't want to give them any excuse to try to stop us. At last discussion with the VPD, it was with the head of the Vancouver Downtown East Side VPD, and she said, after hearing the long explanation of who we were and what we were doing and why, that they appreciated us. They were sorry that we were having difficulties getting a license. They really hoped that we could get a license, but that until we could, we had to stop doing what we were doing. Even though in that conversation with Candace Murphy, I told her very clearly, repeatedly, that we were saving people's lives here. That there was 200 and now, well, over 250 people that were members that were relying on us and were clean from the street drugs. And we have experts, doctors, professors, nurses, written us letters stating that those people would be put at risk of death if we stopped. We didn't stop. We haven't stopped. We won't stop. We can't stop. If they arrest me, there's other people that'll take my place. If they take our RV, we'll go get another vehicle. We won't stop. We care. That's why. We care too much. We know these people too well. Many of them have become family, people that we really care about. They would be devastated if we told them, look, we're really sorry, but we can't keep helping you because your government, your public servants have refused to allow it, and they're flexing their muscles against us, and we have to stop. They would be devastated. They would be absolutely devastated. Your government, our public servants, do not have the right to devastate people's lives with shitty, corrupt decisions about protecting profits for corporate interests that want to monopolize the sale of cannabis. They don't have the right to ruin people's lives to make money for corporate assholes. Sorry, Annie Barbie, but that's what they are, who don't give a shit about our brothers and sisters and sons and daughters. That's what's going on. So that's what I'm doing. That's what we're here doing. That's mostly what the show's been about for the plus 2 years that we've been doing it. And as always on the show, although last week we didn't get to do it. We had the battery die on the camera. Week before that, we sort of got interrupted once we started. But as in all the shows but that one, we're going to go update you with a little taste of life in the RV and the people out there that are making it happen for us. So thanks for watching the show, and let's go for a little road trip. Well, believe it or not, it was a nice day. It's now due to daylight savings time, apparently. It's dark at this time of night, so you don't get to see that it was a nice day, but it's not pouring rain on me, so that's a good thing. And we're here right close to Main and Hastings. It's 1 block away. We're here at the corner of Piss Alley and Wasting and Pain. And we're right where we need to be to help the people that are really struggling down here. This is our RV.
It's smoking.
The Hippy Dippy van, the Ganja Mobile, the CSP Healing Wave RV.
Avoid the back door, he says.
All the things. Avoid the back door.
Andrew's sick.
I'll be the one to pass on such news. There you go. Hi Jennifer Nelson, how are you? If you don't know Jennifer Nelson, she's our social media butterfly that blogs every day about life in the RV and what it's like to be an angel on the downtown of Vancouver.
On the downtown of East Side.
On the downtown of Vancouver.
He hasn't had anything to smoke today.
Yeah, I'm not my usual properly imbibed person. I'm struggling as always.
We all have off days.
How's the day been today?
It's been good.
It's been good. We didn't have to have our tent up today. It wasn't raining.
No, it was a little windy, but you know,
Yeah.
the sun was out.
Yeah, it's been cold, but at least it's not raining. You have a propane heater in there, so it's not too bad.
We do.
All right, so we're gonna go knock on the back door.
I'm heading that way.
Okay.
That means George has to get up.
There's going to be a bit of a surprise today. We don't have the usual not so naughty gnome. Now we have the big green giant. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, we're doing okay.
Oh, that's good. You take up that whole space. Holy smokes, man.
Well,
So George is our alternative CSP operator. When Andrew's not here and George is, he runs the program, and he's been doing a fine job of that ever since. George was one of our original holy rollers back for the cannabis protests that we were having with 420 and Cannabis Day, and he's been following me around ever since, and he's still rolling a bunch of joints. So as we find out every week when we come out here, we got a whole bunch of stuff that we offer people that is all by donation, and they're high dose edibles. So show us, George.
all right. As you can see, we have our regular Gorilla Ganji gummies. We have our 150 milligram caramels. We have our 50 milligram cube gummies. We have some, actually, we have some 40 milligram cubes right now that are making.
So
the
those
420
are
a
from
lot
Green
easier.
Wilderness.
Yeah.
The caramels you showed, they're from Robert
Okay. And we have the cookies are from Robert.
as well.
The brownies are from
Roberta.
Roberta.
Yeah. Gorilla Ganja, of course, as we've mentioned. We do have some stuff that was originally from Weeds, Glass, and Gifts. We've
Some
got
snake oil. That's very popular, it seems to be.
Yeah, we've got caps from Dirty Dave. No, those aren't them.
No, you want these ones then.
Yeah, Dirty Dave is a fantastic activist and a fantastic grower. These are 50 milligram caps of THC that really help a lot of people. He also provides us with 5 milligram caps for people who need a lower dose.
Have those too.
And then the other ones that we have there, they were from another donator.
They're keef caps.
They're Keef caps, and they're also 50 milligrams. We have topical creams. Is there any back here?
Which I don't have any at the
We'll
moment.
maybe show you that on the side. Mary made that for us, cannabis topical creams.
Yeah, Jen has those up front.
Jen has them.
She's been
So
keeping
yeah,
track of them for us.
huge
so.
thanks to all the donators. I'm probably missing some, I'm sure I am. But they don't care. That's the thing. It's the donators that give to the program. They don't care if they get mentioned or not.
We even have 30 milligram candy canes.
From Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
And I like to mention them anyway. I mean, and we do like to support the people that support us, but they're supporting us, without expecting anything back from us. So thanks, George. We'll come and see you on the other side.
Yep. Have a good night.
You as well. Oh, did you? Another link we could just... Sure, that'll work. There we go.
Turn this one this way too.
I think they can probably see us. So welcome to the Healing Wave CSP RV.
Well, no,
You
this
get,
gives you more
get to
room.
sit over there. This is good. In fact, I think I'll go there too. It's a little bit cramped in here, but it's not too bad. As long as you're sitting, it feels pretty good. And so we've been here for over a year now. In the RV. We've been through a pretty cold winter last year, although I think there's other people in Canada that might disagree with that, but cold is cold, and it was cold here, and it's a moist cold here, so it's hard to deal with. And we went through the the heat dome last summer in the RV. Boy, that was tough, eh?
Oh, this summer too.
That was really tough. Boy, it was so sweltering hot in here.
I don't think I wore a shirt all summer. I was just in here. There was fucking sports bra.
You were here topless?
Sports bra.
Sports bra. Oh, I see.
Too hot for much clothing.
Right. So yeah, we've been through a lot out here in the RV. It's been, we've had some great days, some really nice days. You know, we have days where, man, we feel so good about what we're doing. We have other days where we're just in tears because of, you know, people that have passed away or witnessing the struggles that people have here. It's a real emotional roller coaster, being on the downtown east side doing what we're doing, for sure. Very rewarding in the long run, for sure, especially when you're aware of the plight of so many people that are down here, and not just down here. I mean, there's downtown east sides of many cities in Canada. There's lots of these poor ghettos, you know, people that are struggling with poverty and addiction and what have you. And it's really difficult. It's hard to be down here. And when you know that this is going on, if you're not doing something about it, you feel helpless. And you know, it's really disturbing to be like that. So at least what we've got going on here is that we can come here every day and we can feel like we're making a difference. We can intervene with the people that we see, you know, around us as they're struggling. We can offer them high-dose edibles. We can offer them some words of advice. We can give them some compassion. And that's what a lot of people need, is they need to feel like they're cared about here. We talked to Glenn earlier about the foster care situation, where if you're in foster care, not always, of course, but in many cases, it's just a job for somebody. They're just earning money by having you there. You're not their own child. And Glenn felt it in his foster homes. He was in several, that he was not loved by the people that were charged with taking care of him. And he really noticed that, and it really affected him for his life. And many of the people that are down here are struggling with similar things. Either they did not have a proper home, or they had a home that wasn't proper. Which I guess would still be not having a proper home. But, you know, the roots of addiction many times are in childhood. They're in adolescence. They're in the traumas that people suffer before they're adults, before they're even old enough to properly comprehend and deal with what's going on with them. And for many people, it's a lifetime struggle. Very, very difficult to overcome. And, you know, we sympathize with these people. We don't judge them. We don't think that everybody should be able to just pull their pants up and live a good life and make good choices for themselves. We understand that that's very difficult for a number of people for a lot of very good reasons. And we're living in a world where the government doesn't help. The government does not have any compassion for people. They're just like a loveless foster home. And I don't mean to deride foster homes. I know there's a lot of good, caring people out there that have brought children into their homes and have made good people out of those children. And there are some successes for sure, and kudos to all those people. And we need good foster homes for people that need foster homes. But the truth is that over the years, many of those situations have not been healthy for people, and many people still struggle, you know, in their adult life because of things that have happened to them as youngsters. So we don't judge anybody here. We have great compassion for the people that we see. We just want to help as best we can, and that's what we try to do. So we should be supported, shouldn't we? And in fact, we are really doing the work that governments should be doing in looking after people. Governments are supposed to be made up of people. They're supposed to be made up of people that behave as if they're public servants, that their whole motivation is to serve the public. And yet we find that's certainly not the case. If they were going to serve the public, they would support what we're doing. They would allow low barrier access to cannabinoids. They'd probably give, you know, put a lot of money into free counseling for people down here and help them in that way. But the services are scarce with respect to governments. They do fund a lot of different groups, for sure, but there's a lot of corruption in that as well. Many of the groups down here that are collecting government money are not here to non-judgmentally help people. They're here to look like they're helping people because they're making a whack of cash off of the backs of these people. And we find that with lots of the groups down here. There's a lot of groups down here that are involved in maintaining people down here. There's not a lot of groups down here that are involved in helping people get out of the mess that they're in and move on with their lives. There are some. There again, I don't want to deride the good ones, but there's a lot of corruption. And corruption rules the day in our country, believe it or not, you know. Canada seems like this nice, clean, friendly, polite place. And for the most part, many of the people here are like that. But unfortunately, government policy has not reflected that. Government policy has continued to evolve over the years more and more to protect corporate interests and to take money from people that can't afford it and to overcharge for things and to make it look like they're doing something, when really all they're doing is making sure that the main players, the rich people, get to continue to rape us on a constant basis for what money we have. So these are the things we've learned. This is a project that we learn a lot here. We learn a lot about what helps people. We get a lot of feedback from the people that we're helping. We get a lot of advice on a daily basis about how to be better. We've learned how to treat people, what to say, what not to say. And we've learned about how corrupt our governments are, how really this whole world we're living in is all made up about making money for a few people. That the big corporations have us by the short and curlies. They own us, and they act like it, and they don't care about us, and that is very, very evident. You look at this pandemic that we're in, and the amount of money that is spent, and you look at why that money's spent, and you look at government policies with respect to this pandemic, and disgustingly, it's all about making money for big corporations, and it's all about our political leaders trying to make political bank on the decisions that they're making. They are deciding to lock people down, restrict people's freedoms, all based on polling as to how many people are scared and how many people want lockdowns and want tight restrictions, and that's what drives the policy. Not good science, not ethics, corruption. Don't want to get into the pandemic. We have our own little epidemic here that we're dealing with of overdose deaths that far surpasses the problems and the deaths of that other pandemic, where they seem to have endless amounts of money to give away to people to get their votes, to keep themselves in office, to continue to curry political favor amongst the populace. When a solution to the epidemic, or at least part of the solution to the epidemic, would be easy access to high-dose cannabis edibles. We've proven it. We've demonstrated it. We've been doing this for years now. We have professors and doctors on board with us. We have all the harm reduction groups in the neighborhood on board with us, supporting what we're doing here. We have no detractors. We've had no problems. We've harmed nobody in any significant way other than overdosing on cannabis edibles, which is never fatal and may dissuade you from trying it again, but it's a minor detail. For trying to replace a deadly substance with a non-fatal substance, this should be supported by government. All they would need is proper education about the dynamics of cannabis edibles and leave it to people to regulate their own intake. And this problem would be being addressed by many, many people that aren't able to address it now. Most people that are struggling with opioid addiction and other addiction don't even know about how cannabis can get them through withdrawal. They don't even know that high-dose edibles have the potential to replace those drugs. They think of cannabis as a smoked substance that doesn't have much power compared to the opioids and other things. They don't understand that edibles can probably be as powerful, now not to the point of killing you, but they can certainly, you can eat too much edibles. And if you can eat too much, you can find that level that is enough, and people can find enough to deal with what they're dealing with and live a good, happy life using cannabis high-dose edibles, instead of just trying to survive the pain of every day by using opioids and other drugs to fend off the withdrawals and to fend off all the bad things that happen if you start taking that. But they're really just maintaining a miserable life in the process. There's a good life waiting for them with cannabis high-dose edibles if they were available and if it was common knowledge that that could help. So the mainstream media is culpable, and our governments are culpable in the actual deaths of many of our family members and our brothers and sisters here. And they continue to murder people by not allowing high-dose edibles to be easily accessible to people. So that's the deal. The media and the government are corrupt. That's how I started the show. That's how I'm going to end the show. It's corruption that's causing the deaths of these people. It's corruption that's causing the prohibition and overregulation of substances. It's greed. It's greed for money and control. At the government level, at the corporate level, that's what's driving policy. That's what's driving the deaths. We are being literally murdered by corporate America, corporate Canada, the media, and our public servants. It's a sad state of affairs. We're criminals here doing what we're doing. We understand, like any dispensary owner, that at any moment, cops could surround us, arrest us, seize all of our products, and make it difficult for us to continue, although we still would. We know that. That's the world we're living in. We're upset about it. It's traumatizing for us. For me, it hurts my brain that we could be proving and demonstrating so clearly the value of what we're doing is so immense, and yet we can't get our public servants to support us, and we can't get the media to report on it. It is corruption. Plain and simple, corruption. I don't like living in a corrupt world. I don't like living in a corrupt country. I don't like dealing with corrupt police and corrupt public servants. And I'm going to do everything I can to try to stop that in my life. I hope that you will feel the same. Before I sign off, which I was about to do, you guys got anything you want to add?
I don't know.
I like putting them on the spot.
I was just listening.
You are so good in your blogs when you get going, and you get that, you can see it in your blogging. That, you know, you start feeling what you feel, and it comes out on paper. And it's very emotional for you too, right?
Oh yeah, like a lot of my posts, so like I've started crying writing them.
You can tell that.
Especially talking about like some of our members that have passed away. One of our most recent ones, actually, his uncle came by today. I bought a Bob Marley shirt off of him. And I found out one of our other members actually was friends with him and lives right either below or above his dad. And so his dad is letting him take a bunch of his shit. All he wanted was the pictures, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of sadness that happens here for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of drives us as well. You know?
Definitely.
When you feel that way, at least you don't have to be helpless.
Yeah. Especially, like, he was someone struggling with addiction, right? And he really liked our taffy. And, like, I just keep thinking, you know, Dave, I wish you'd come and gotten some taffy instead of heroin. Yeah. You know, but that's the problem. Like, depending on the time of day, if we weren't available, you know, he's going to get what's accessible, right? So, and that's what sucks, is stuff like that is always accessible. So.
Yeah, easily available. You know, we talk about there should be easy access to cannabis. Well, what there is easy access down here is to all those other drugs. On every block, there's somebody standing there, 3 or 4 people, you know, just waiting for customers. There's tents where, you know, the tent is all just a little dispensary of hard drugs and heroin and stuff. It's
funny
easy.
enough, we've actually had lots of people come here asking if we have meth or heroin or crack. I'm like, no, we don't have any of that stuff.
And those places will give you credit too. We don't give credit. We give free joints and we give free edibles. We give a whole bunch, like 420 milligrams every 4 days to over 260 people part of the program. But we don't turn anybody away. If they're on the waiting list and they can't get on to the regular list, they come to the window. They all get either a 100 milligram muffin or a 30 milligram cookie and a joint. And they can do that every day.
The people that I can tell are really hurting, I give extra edibles to.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We try to do things on a case-by-case basis and, you know, help where we can help. So that's what we're doing. We're here because there's a whole bunch of other people that help us do this. Just sitting in an RV wouldn't do much. Having all of this stuff to distribute to people, that does a lot for us. Everything that the Cannabis Substitution Program dispenses to people is by donation, all of it. And it's huge. It's 12,000 milligrams a day, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day for the last 17 months here. And twice a week for 2.5 years before that at Vandu, and once a week for a year before that at Vandu. A super big ton of stuff is being given out here to all of these people, and it's only because of the donators. It's only because we have stuff to give out. I don't make any of it. I don't have it. I just get it given to me to give to people. We are just a vehicle for people to give back. Our suppliers and donators, they care. They care so much that they constantly bake for nothing, for free, and provide it to us. And many of them we've had for years and years. The people that I mentioned at the back door there that provide most of that stuff for us, it's been years that they've been giving us stuff. And we can't thank them enough. I mean, they're what makes the program work. In the other places, it's all volunteers, it's all donation. The other cannabis substitution projects, they all need help too. They all could use as many donations as possible. If you're in the area of London, Halifax, Vancouver, or even if you're not, and you can help, please help. We can always use more. There's a never-ending need here, and that's the thing when you're giving stuff away, is there's always going to be a never-ending need. But that's fine. We want to be able to address the need as best we can. We maybe can't ever help everybody, but we want to help as many people as we can, and that requires donators. So please donate, and for those that have, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I can never thank you enough. I can't express it properly. Just know that you are so much appreciated by us and by the people that we're helping. We hear it every day. People come here and thank us so much. We get all that thanks, but we're not the ones that are donating the stuff. So it's the donators that deserve all that thanks, and they seldom ever get to hear it. I'm sure they know they're doing a great deal of good, but they really don't get to witness much of it except when they come and bring it to us. We say thank you so much. But, you know, they should really be here with us in the RV, getting the benefit of all of the people that come here, many of them with tears in their eyes, sometimes with big beaming smiles, thanking us profusely for what we're doing here. People come here and they're just shocked. They can't believe it. They're like, I heard there was somebody here that was giving out free cannabis. Couldn't believe it, but look, here you are, and look what I've got. And, you know, they're amazed by it. And so, you know, thank you so much to people that are donating. You could be one of those people. You could have that same great feeling in your heart of doing something great for this world by helping us help people. And that's the opportunity that we're here to provide, is to help us help people. And thank you to all those people that do it. Thank you to Neil, my producer, for helping me with this show. Thank you to Cannabis Culture for allowing me this platform to get this stuff off my chest and let me feel like I'm at least telling some people about it. And thank you all for watching the show and doing whatever you're doing to help us or to help the situation. There's other shows on Pot TV you can watch as well. There's Carly Marley and BC Bud Gal on Mondays with the 420 Lifestyle Show. BC Bud Gal again on Thursdays with Morning Glory. A Wake and Bake show starts around 10. Johnny B on Fridays, and if not, you can always watch the archives of these shows with How's It Growing. And How's It Growing, in my mind, one of the most important shows, because we all should be growing as much as we can. If you can grow, do grow. If we all grew for ourselves and for other people and as much as we could, well, that's how we win this thing. We've had a mantra here since Mark Emery's Cannabis Culture days of overgrow the government. That is the strategy. That has been working and will continue to work. Keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. And keep watching this show and keep sharing it out and keep doing whatever you can do to make the world a better place. That's where true living comes into being. Yes, life is amazing and there's wonderful things out there and so many good experiences to have. But in a world that's a bit upside down, in a world that suffers lots of different problems, if you can make a difference, there's a feeling that you get from that really can't be bought and really isn't matched by holidays, vacations, beachside resorts, movies, or any of the other great things in life. There's just something really profound and really special about giving of yourself to help people that don't have what you have, or were born into trauma, or have suffered trauma, or for whatever reason find themselves struggling in life. Giving back to those people, helping those people, is a reward beyond just about anything else you can do. Helping to counter the corruption that's going on in our world, helping to put a wrench in the gears of the corrupt politicians and the corrupt corporations, gives you a sense of satisfaction that is hard to match with anything else going on in life. So I recommend you try it. Give it a shout. Give it a try. Write a letter. Talk to somebody, call an open line show. So many things you can do. Write letters to the people that are involved with us. Write letters to Health Canada. Write letters to the PMO. Anywhere you can think of. The whole beauty of having a whole bunch of people working on a problem is that so many people have unique and creative ways of going about solving that problem. So if you take your uniqueness and your creative ways of dealing with this problem and go forward with it, you'll be part of a great team of people that just might eventually turn this world back to being right side up and address much of the corruption that we're living with right now. It can happen. We can have limited, accountable, transparent public servants if we work for it. And I recommend we all do. So thank you again. Carry on. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to other people. And above all else, the most important thing, as always, is have as much fun as you can. See you next week.